Hello my friends and welcome back to another video. Today I am going to be talking about the 25 books I want to read in 2025. I actually have never filmed one of these videos before. I've never made one of these lists before, to be honest with you. Like, there's always some that are on my radar, but I never like write them out formally. And then when I was doing my book journal, which hopefully I'll have a video out of like my old book journal and then this year's book journal set up. When I was setting up my new book journal though, I really realized that I wanted to have the 25 and 25. I also just like that 25 is like that really clean number. So that's what we're doing. This list has a lot of different books on it and I kind of broke it up into categories. So I have books that I really want to get to that I already own on my physical TBR. Then there are books that are like classics. I really want to read some classics. There's some books that are already out and really highly rated, but I really want to get to, but I don't own them yet. And then there are books that are new releases. So those are the four categories that kind of make up this list of the 25 books that I want to read this year. Without further ado, let's get into it, shall we? So first category is going to be the books on my physical TBR that I already own, but I didn't get around to reading last year. Book number one on my list is The Women by Kristin Hannah. If you've been around, you know that this has been on my monthly TBR countless amount of times. It's made it onto some of the best lists of 2024, really highly rated. Its good read rating is like in the 4.5 range. It has amazing reviews. If you aren't familiar with Kristin Hannah, this one's kind of a historical fiction following women who were in the Vietnam War, particularly one who I believe volunteers to be a nurse when her brother enlists in the war. So we're following that woman, and I'm guessing we meet other women along the way. Another book I want to get to is The Ministry of Time. So I believe that this is like a dystopian sci-fi romance. So this kind of follows a female protagonist, and I believe that this is set in the near future, and they're doing some sort of experiment regarding time travel. And so she gets like assigned a certain comrade to keep in line or to track his like progress using the experiment, but apparently this is like a guy from like the 1840s that is dead, but clearly not because he is here in this setting. But I also heard that this book has a lot of romantic moments and really, really beautiful lyrical writing. It's also a debut novel by this author, Callie Ann Bradley. So I'm really excited to get into that one. Another book I really want to get into is Crescent City, particularly the first one, which is House of Earth and Blood by Sarah J. Maas. This is a book I've had on my shelf since it came out because prior to getting back into my reading about 2 or 3 years ago, like way back when in college, I read A Court of Thorns and Roses, and then this book came out, I believe in 2019 or 2020, right before lockdown, and I got it thinking this is what I'm gonna read, and then lockdown happened and I didn't even touch it. I beg your pardon. A crime. But as I am finishing up Throne of Glass now for the first time all the way through, and I've already read A Court of Thorns and Roses, I did another reread of that this year. I think it's time I finally get to this last book in the Sarah J. Maas universe. The next one I have on my list is Cleopatra and Frankenstein, which is a book by Coco Mellors. This kind of follows a woman who gets married in order to obtain a green card and kind of the relationship that ensues, self-discovery, XYZ. I really like this author. I read Blue Sisters by her this year and fell head over heels, and I know that Cleopatra and Frankenstein even has a larger cult following. I also really love how she writes multiple POVs. Her Blue Sisters book was multiple POVs, and I fell in love with every single one, and I thought every single one had a unique voice, but also just a clear voice from that author. So, Coco Mellors, I think you're going to be an auto-buy author for me. I don't know, but I have your other book on my shelf, so we're about to find out. Great. Another book I have on my shelf that I haven't gotten to is A Fate Inked in Blood by Danielle L. Jensen. This book got a little bit of hype mid-year when it came out in 2024, and I think I picked it as my book of the month for that month, and I just never got around to reading it. But I do know that the sequel is coming out this year and is a really highly anticipated release for a lot of people. A little bit about the plot: I know that this woman is married and in royalty, and maybe an unhappy marriage, and through a trick of some sort or to fulfill a prophecy or a fate, the husband basically gets her inked, and she has like special magic abilities that I don't believe she ever asked for. So that sounds really interesting to me. Again, I haven't heard a lot about this book, haven't read a lot into the plot, but it got some decent hype, and as we all know, I'm a big fantasy girly, romantic girly. I think I'm gonna enjoy it, and I want to get it off my physical TBR. Okay, that concludes the books that are on my physical TBR that I want to get to right away this year. Next is going to be books that have already been released and have either high reviews or I have really wanted to get to in the last couple of years and just haven't. I have Half a Soul by Olivia Atwater. Now, this book, I know it's set in the Regency era and like the London social season, which if you're not familiar with that kind of writing is like oftentimes just to get people off the marriage mart. There's tons of balls, tons of beautiful things. I love reading Regency era, London seasons, all those books. Like those are my favorite classics too. I can't get enough of them. I eat them up. And this one is also set where main protagonist is cursed by a fairy and so is trying to keep some of that under wraps during the social season in London. Sign me up. So that's one I want to get to this year. Another book I want to get to is Babel by R.F. Kuang. Now this book is very thick, very dense, but I did read The Poppy War and Yellowface by R.F. Kuang in the last couple of years, and I really love her writing style. I also think it's kind of intense and darker, and so Babel is, I believe, about a professor living in like the department where they're translating things. And I do really like the social conflicts that ensue between like Chinese and other governments, and I think R.F. Kuang really writes that well, and so I think this one's going to be an interesting one where it's kind of like the academic has to choose between like his motherland and the life that he's already selected for himself working in that department. So I think this is gonna be really cool. The next book on my list is Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson, which is the final Empire book one of the series. Anyone who has ever told you about Brando Sando is going to tell you to start with this book. So you've probably heard it across your TBRs a million times. But as someone who I've kind of dipped my toes in the like the water of fantasy over the years, and now I think I really want to get into some more world building, some higher level thinking, some more complex systems, XYZ. And I know the man to go to is Brando Sando. I know he's going to take care of me. So I really want to get to Mistborn this year. I think that this is going to really help me get into like that sector of fantasy books and sci-fi. That's what I want to do. So Mistborn, Brando Sando. Next book on my list is Quicksilver by Callie Hart. This was a Kindle Unlimited blockbuster, I would say. People went nuts for this, and they said that the romance is incredible. She is like a pickpocket or a thief, and she's thrown into a world that she thought never existed, of Fae. And when her life gets entwined with other characters in the Fae world, crazy stuff happens. And I heard that the romance in this is absolutely fantastic, and I have been meaning to use my Kindle more and to really make use of my Kindle Unlimited subscription. I don't always do a good job of that. So Quicksilver has made it on the list of top 25 in 2025. The next book I want to read is Spark of the Everflame by Penn Cole. Again, this book I feel like hit it out of the park. I know that it's book one of a series. I know that the second book is already out at least, and I have just been super intrigued by everyone's review of this lately. I can't get enough. The main character is trying to kind of take on battle in order to save her family, but that comes with a love interest in the kingdom who is also her enemy. Whoa. And that her mother has left behind mysteries that she kind of needs to puzzle out in order to save her family. I also know that there's like a civil war breaking out, so honestly, my favorite fantasy is when there's like at least something higher at stake, and I love it when the individual has high stakes, the world has high stakes, and the love interest is high stakes. Sign me up. This is going to be a very good read. The next book on my list is Heartless Hunter by Kristen Cicerelli. Pardon me if I butchered her last name. There is someone who just is living in a regular society, but by night she is trying to save witches because she herself is a witch but is keeping it under wraps. And I know that she gets into this kind of crazy web with a witch hunter, and she's trying to hide who she is while also kind of changing the kingdom one step at a time. And then when it comes out that she is a witch, she realizes that she herself is being hunted. Crazy. So what do you do with a romance between a witch and a witch hunter? I don't know, but I'm gonna find out. I'm gonna find out when I read this book. Okay, the last book in this category is probably gonna sound kind of random to a lot of you, but it is Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez. So this romance takes place between a girl whose family is all doctors and she wants to become a surgeon, and kind of a nobody man who is a carpenter, and somehow they're falling in love and it's gonna shake up their life. Now, I have never read an Abby Jimenez book. Do I have a couple of her books on my shelf? Absolutely. But are they the first book to be read? No. And I will say, so Part of Your World is the first book of the interconnected standalones that she's currently writing in right now. So Part of Your World, I believe it's Yours Truly, and then Just for the Summer, and then the fourth one I can't remember, but it's coming out this year. So that's where I want to start, because I do have a couple books from that world already, not this one, but a couple books from that world. And so I'm not going to do the Friend Zone interconnected trilogy that comes before this. I'm going to do this one. So that's why I'm starting with this book. I don't know a ton about this book particularly, but I do think that Abby Jimenez is going to be a romance author that I can kind of digest and enjoy. I am incredibly picky when it comes to romance books. I cannot be swayed. There's so many authors that I no longer will read after this year of trying to get into romance. This year, I want to read Abby Jimenez because I think she is an author that I'm going to enjoy. Knock on everything, because heaven forbid, if I jinx this for myself, I will be livid. Now moving on to classics. So I do have just a couple classics on here that I want to get to this year. The first one is The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas. This book is giving Shawshank Redemption vibes. Based off a true story, by the way. Crazy. But it's about a man that's like wrongfully imprisoned in this like really intense prison. And so while he is in prison, he is not only plotting to escape the prison, but he is trying to plot a revenge on the 3 men that got him arrested in the first place. This book has made it onto so many people's top lists of all time, and I am very intrigued by it. It is a thick book. Oh my gosh. I went to look at it in the bookstore once thinking I'd pick it up, and then I looked at how big it was and I was like, absolutely not. I need to get this on Kindle. Like, in no world am I picking up. It's a textbook. It's the size of my face and I have a big head, okay? I think it just is a really good characterization of how far a man will go in order to seek justice, but also push the limits of themselves when put in a situation out of their control. The next book on my list is Emma by Jane Austen. Now, this is technically a reread for me, but it has been 15 years since I read it. I just did that math in my head and it made me want to throw up. It made me want to actually throw up. So the main character, Emma, is kind of just like a single girl, but she doesn't have a mother. She's just living with, I believe, her father and a caretaker. And she kind of grows up spoiled and as like the town matchmaker until she realized that she has like met her match and falling in love is not black and white like she thought it was. So kind of a fun, cutie little romance. Another classic I really want to get to is The Secret Garden. This is one I've never read, and I have just watched the movie like growing up as a child. I think, was it animated? I think it was an animated movie that I watched a ton as like a little girl. And I know the basic premise. It's kind of set in this like spooky haunted mansion, and this girl is like set apart from this little boy who is like chronically ill, but then they kind of spark up a friendship and they meet in the secret garden where there's like whimsy and mystery, and it's this garden that's like hidden on the property, and they just have a really wholesome friendship. I've heard that this is really lyrical writing and that there's kind of like eerie elements but also set like in a beautiful garden. So I think that's my cup of tea. I think that's my cup of tea. It's like classic meets like magical realism meets like kind of a gothic cozy fantasy. I don't know. No one's saying this about this book. I'm saying all of that, but I'm intrigued and it's a classic I just have been wanting to get to. Now on to our last section, which is new releases. Whew! There are so many good new releases coming out this year. I could hardly believe my eyes when I was going through the list. But the first one, no one's gonna be surprised here, Onyx Storm by Rebecca Yarros. Speechless. Fourth Wing, I was in it just like everyone else on this planet. I was in it. I believe I gave it like 4 stars. I loved it. I was obsessed. And I read that actually really close to the release date of Iron Flame. So when Iron Flame came out, I was part of the hype. I got it the day it came out. I was reading it. Fantastic. However, it let me down. Iron Flame really let me down. The constant like back and forth argument that they've already settled, the constant like, can we just learn our lesson and not keep secrets from the love of our life? The constant like, we all are trying to obtain the same thing and secrets don't make friends. Like, can we stop I don't know. It was too much for me, and a lot of people are saying, this is a slight spoiler, so if you have not read these books, don't listen. A lot of people are saying that the love interest is Dane and not Xaden. Am I nervous? Absolutely I am. So Onyx Storm, January 21, that's coming out. The next book is The Rose Bargain by Sasha Payton Smith, and this is coming out February 4th. Okay, so The Rose Bargain is kind of set in this fairy tale world where you can give up something of your own in order to obtain something that makes you appealing to a suitor. So I think the example that they like gave in the plot summary was like, you can give up your smile for the ability to have great taste. You can give up like your beautiful hair in order to have the ability to play the piano. My neighbor literally just started shoveling their driveway right outside my window. Okay, we're gonna forge ahead anyway. So you can exchange something of yourself in order to gain something greater. And apparently our main character's sister has made one of those set exchanges, but it ended up ruining her in some kind of catastrophic way. So we find out that the prince of the realm is going to be looking for a bride this season, and so she has to decide what is she willing to exchange in order to have the love of the prince and maybe help her sister and her family gain back money, power, or save her sister. So that's kind of the thing about this. Again, I kind of said it earlier, I love the social season. I love the courting and the romance and the of it all. And so I think that this is just combining my favorite things and putting it into one book. And I also saw like a description say it was similar to the Selection series, which again, one of my all-time favorite series. I will not budge on that. It is just one of the best series of all time. The next book on my list is Accomplice to the Villain by Hannah Nicole Mayer. I read the first two books really close to when they came out. I ate those books up and left no crumbs. I love the high stakes, the constant missions, the things that they're doing in order to move the plot along in the world, but I also really believe their romance, and I love that it's not the dead center of everything, but their connection is so valid and funny. Our main girl is hilarious. She's quippy. The side characters, quippy. The frog, Kingsley with his little stinking signs, quippy. Our main character, like, who's this tough, brooding man, but like also just like a softie, amazing. And I just think it's a really fine balance of like the budding romance, will they, won't they, that happens throughout the series. I love it, but it also doesn't distract from the high stakes. It complements the high stakes of the missions they're going on. So can't wait for book number 3, coming out in August. The next book on my list is The Ballad of Falling Dragons. This is by Sarah H. Parker. It is the sequel to When the Moon Hatched, book 2 of this series. And when I tell you I ate up this book, Con. Again, the love in this book is wonderful. I really like that we are discovering things alongside our character. I forget what that kind of trope is called, but I like it when we don't know something that the main character doesn't know, but that we're given hints as they are piecing it together, we are piecing it together. That's like my favorite kind of fantasy to read. And the cover is stunning. This one is coming out in October, so we do have a long wait, but I'm so excited. The next book on my list is The Night and the Moth by Rachel Gillig. This book is coming out May 20th. Rachel Gillig is the one that wrote One Dark Window, Two Twisted Crowns, that gothic kind of fantasy duo. I think her concepts are so original and unique, but wonderful. Again, she's an author that writes dual POVs, multiple POVs really, really well, and I find myself liking every single character's POV. But I will say, book 2, one of the characters she gave a POV to, I love him so much, and he is like my guy now and forevermore. So I believe that this is another duology coming out by her, and I believe this is set with like someone who is works in the cathedral and in her dreams gets visions from the gods, and she's trying to figure out what those visions mean, and she ends up kind of going on this mission with like a darker person character who needs her help and she needs his help, but they are clearly opposites. And so I think they're like, can a heretic fulfill the prophecy of the gods? Kind of dark, kind of spooky, again similar to like her other past writing, but I am so ready for it. I will read anything this woman writes. Okay, this next book is something that I'm willing into existence, and we do not have a release date. No one said anything, and that is the next Daisy Hates book in the Magnolia Parks universe, and I believe it's going to be called like Halcyon's End or Halcyon. This is the next Daisy Hates installment. I am obsessed with Christian. I am obsessed with Julian. Those are my boys, and they get way more of a feature in the Daisy Hates books. We already know that the Magnolia Parks part of this Magnolia Parks universe, those 3 books are done. It is rumored that we're going to get 2 more Daisy Hates books. It was leaked that this was the title, but she has already announced that she's working on Never 2, which is a sequel to Never. So, in that realm, I'm just manifesting that Daisy Hates comes out this year, but it is highly unlikely. So that's why it's on this list. The real one that I'm going to try to get to is Never. Now, this is her Peter Pan reimagining. It's like the great-granddaughter of Wendy going to Neverland and kind of what that looks like. So it's like a retelling, reimagination of Peter Pan. And it has not gotten great reviews, but I just believe in my heart of hearts that I'm supposed to read whatever Jessa Hastings writes, so I'm gonna read Never, unless Daisy Hates comes out. So they're gonna share a book slot on my 25 and 25. The next book is Sunrise on the Reaping. This book is coming out in March 18th. Now this is another prequel by her, which has already gotten a movie deal. Thank you, Suzanne Collins. This one follows Haymitch and his Hunger Games, which we all know was one of the Quarter Quells, and I believe for this one, it was like double the contestants. And as we know, because he's the mentor in later books, spoiler, maybe, he survives and he wins. So it's like, what did he have to do to survive this Hunger Games? So now my dog's barking. Simon, stop. So sorry, had to take a brief pause. But yes, Sunrise on the Reaping, March 18th. Can't wait. Hunger Games, let's go. The next book on this is Catabasis by R.F. Kuang. She got 2 on here? That's crazy. I didn't write down the release date for this one, but this one is basically like a professor goes missing into the underworld and 2 of his students are going to descend into hell in order to find him. I'm actually really interested about this book. I like that it's set kind of more in the gods realm and the academia realm. And again, R.F. Kuang can do no wrong. She's the only author on my 25 books that has 2 books in there. Crazy. Now, this is probably my most highly anticipated book on here. It is My Friends by Friedrich Bachmann. This book comes out May 20th, as well as one other book I already mentioned. I already forgot, but it comes out May 20th. This book is kind of interesting. So there's a famous painting, and in the corner of that famous painting, there are 3 teenagers at the end of a pier depicted. And the story is about the origin of those 3 people in this painting. And then the 4th being the artist that paints them. And it's all high schoolers who were trying to escape really bad home lives. Friedrich Bachmann is one of those authors that he just writes each individual character so well, and the way they intertwine with each other is beautiful, breathtaking. I read most of his books this year. I read so many of this man's work this year, and I'd never read him before. Shout out to Bestie Carrie. She mailed me one of his books, and I just really fell in love with his writing because I think it is like so nonchalant and then all of a sudden heartbreaking. And the cover for this, it's actually gorgeous. It's actually gorgeous. And the last book on my list is called Water Moon by Samantha Yodo Yambao. This one comes out January 14th, so by the time you're watching this, it's out, babes. And this one takes place in a magical pawn shop. What? And so for people who are lost, they might stumble upon it and they will find something in there that will tell them about their life choices that are their deepest regret. And so people are coming in there to receive help. Now, there's a new shop owner. Her name is Hannah. And she realizes on her first day on the job that the shop has been ransacked and the only person around that she can see is this really, really charming person who's there not to receive help, but to offer help to her, which is interesting. So together they kind of go into this mystical world where they have to find solution to the problem of the missing item that they're looking for, as well as Hannah's father who's apparently missing. And so this duo, what's gonna happen? What are they gonna get into? I don't know, but I'm really looking forward to it. So you guys, that concludes the 25 books I want to read in 2025. Comment down below if you have any amazing suggestions based off what I've selected that you think I should read. That would be amazing. Otherwise, I will see you in the next video. Bye.